God's story. Scene 1. The Genesis.
Or, help God, we have messed it up already.
In the beginning, there was nothing but God, and so God spoke, and there was light. Over the course of 7 days, God created all things. The earth, nice, animals, fish, the entire universe, and finally, a man created to be like himself.
Not bad. Hey, don't you just love that new planet smell? Come on.
Yeah, but God saw that the man was lonely, so he created woman to be his companion.
Huh, not bad.
Everything was perfect. God had provided the man and woman everything they needed, and they were in a relationship with him just as he had planned. Until one day...
Hey, girlfriend.
Who, me?
No, I'm talking to the only woman on the planet. Yes, of course, you.
All right, what do you want?
Well, I was just wondering, you know, that dude you hang out with sometimes?
Yeah?
You know, you guys seem to have it pretty good around here and all, but I notice that you never eat from that tree over there that my tongue is pointing to.
That tree over there?
That's the one.
Well, yeah, you see, God gave us one rule, and we can't eat from that tree, otherwise we will die.
Get out of here. For eating one piece of fruit?
Yeah,
You're gonna die?
yeah.
Are you telling me that you got the run of the whole wide world, but you're scared to eat from one little tree?
I'm not scared.
Yes, you're scared.
I'm not scared.
You're a chicken.
No, I'm not.
Prove it.
Fine.
Hey, Eve, what's going on? Oh, I'm starving. Hey, can I have a bite of that?
Sure, go for it. Knock yourself out.
Yeah, they had broken the one rule that God had given, and as a result, messed up a perfect relationship with the perfect God. They were banished from the Garden of Eden and had to spend their days laboring for the food that once had been provided to them. Time passed, and Adam and Eve had 2 sons. Abel was a shepherd.
Howdy!
And Cain was a farmer.
Oh, yee-haw.
You know, I've been so blessed by God. He's given me so many animals, and they're growing, and they're healthy, and I just got God to praise for that. I'm going to give him the best that I've got.
Oh, yes. You know, I love being a farmer because it's so great to work out in the hot sun all day long, taking care of all these plants. Gee, I guess I should be grateful. Fine, I'll give God something at church today. What are you looking at? You don't think I'm going to give God some of my best, do you?
God was pleased with Abel's sincere offering of his best sheep, but Cain, not so much.
What?
God said to Cain, "Why are you so angry? You need to get control of that before it leads you to sin."
Okay, fine. Yeah, sure, I'll work on that. Hey, Abel, I got something to show you.
I like to see things. What you got?
I got it right around here.
All right, let's go.
So Cain killed Abel, and the first murder had been committed. From then on, things didn't get much better. Man continued to get more and more evil and grow further and further apart from God. And that relationship that God once had with his people, his very reason for creating them, was long gone. So God decided to start over. He brought on a huge flood, destroying everyone in the world except one man's family, whom he shut into a boat with 2 of every animal.
They just wish they were dead from the smell.
Yeah. Noah's family was saved from the flood and got busy repopulating the earth.
Bow, chicka, bow, wow.
Scene 2, the promise. Time passed, and even though God had shown with the flood he meant business, most people ignored him and continued to sin. But a few people really tried to follow him. One such person was a man named Abraham.
Abraham,
What? Who's that?
it's me, God.
Oh, hi, God. What do you want?
You have obeyed me, and so I will make a promise to you. I will give you more descendants than the stars in the sky. I will make a nation of people out of you, and they will be my people.
Well, that's great and all, God, but I only have a one-bedroom tent. Where am I going to put all these people?
I will give you land of your own. I will show you a wonderful land that I will give to your descendants. You will defeat all those who live in this land. If you trust and obey me, it'll be a land flowing with milk and honey.
Ooh, wow.
Now go.
All right.
And so the promise was made, a promise that would show God's faithfulness time and again, even though it'd be a while before it would actually happen. So time passed, and Abraham and Sarah gave birth to a son. God came to Abraham and told him to sacrifice Isaac to him as a test.
Come here, Sonny.
No.
Abraham was just about to go through with it when an angel stopped Abraham.
Stop!
Oh, hallelujah.
Abraham, you don't have to do this. God was just testing you, and you passed.
Oh, sorry, son.
Sorry. Dad, you were always embarrassing me in front of people.
More time passed, and Isaac had kids of his own, 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob eventually had 12 sons of his own, one who was named Joseph. Now, the story of Joseph and his brothers is well known, so we're going to kind of fast forward through this a little. You guys ready? Hey, there we go. Jacob loved Joseph the most and gave him a special colored coat. The brothers hated Joseph, and they sold him into slavery.
Get out of here.
Joseph worked for a guy named Potiphar, but got thrown into prison when Potiphar's wife hit on him. Pharaoh was disturbed by some of the weird dreams, and he heard of a guy in prison who could interpret dreams. Joseph told Pharaoh that his dream meant that there was a famine coming throughout Egypt, and in 7 years there'd be no food. Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of Egypt, and Joseph stockpiled the food for the time of the famine, saving Egypt. Joseph's whole family joined him during the famine. Years passed, and Joseph's family got larger and larger. This is where God's promise to Abraham began to come true. Eventually, Joseph died, but his family kept getting larger and larger. Bye, Joseph, you died. A new Pharaoh who didn't remember Joseph or liked the fact that all of those Israelites were in Egypt, so he enslaved them all. But they just kept multiplying until there were about 2 million of them.
No.
The Pharaoh decided to put an end to the Israelites once and for all. He decreed that any Hebrew boys born during this time would be put to death. It was at this time that Moses was born.
Ta-da!
Come on, people. That was impressive.
Come on.
Scene 3, the Exodus, or Enter Moses, Exit Us. Get it? Exit us?
Really?
Anyway, it was at this time that Moses was born.
Hello, I am Moses. So here's the story. I was the prince of Egypt, but then I kind of, sort of, accidentally, on purpose, killed a guy, and so I ran away to Midian.
Welcome to Midian, land of adventure and intrigue. Could I interest you in some of my goods?
No thank you. Anyways, what I was saying, so I'm in Midian, and God speaks to me through this burning bush and tells me to go back to Egypt and free his Israelites. So here,
Moses, you must be joking.
well, I'm not. Here I am.
I will never let your people go.
Tough luck, Pharaoh. God's going to send his power on you.
I'd love
And
to see him try.
To make a long story short,
Too late.
he did.
Let the plagues begin. Blood in the Nile.
Flies.
Gnats.
Dead livestock.
Boils! Ow! Oh, you were killing me! Ouch!
Hail! 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 Really? Locust? You couldn't do something else? Locust? Come on.
It's dark. I can't see. I can't see anything. It's so dark.
And finally, the death of every firstborn son in Egypt.
Israelites, hear me out. If you take the blood of a perfect lamb and put it on your doorposts today, God will pass you when the plague of death kills all the firstborn sons.
And God did.
Moses, my son is dead. Take your people and go.
All right, 430 years of slaves over. Come on, Israelites, let's go.
And everything was going great.
Following the leader, the leader, the leader. We're following the me wherever I may go.
For about the first 5 minutes.
We're wandering.
Moses, do we have to go this way? I mean, the Red Sea is right in front of us, and we can't cross it. And Pharaoh's behind us, and he's going to kill us.
Why
You
did
got something?
we leave? Yeah, I do. Why did we leave? We should just go back. We're all gonna die out here.
I wish I was back in Egypt.
Stop whining. Oh my goodness.
So God allowed Moses to part the Red Sea, leading the Israelites through on dry ground. But the Egyptians were destroyed as water filled back in. Over the next year, many things happened, and the Israelites wandered in the desert toward the land that God had promised Abraham. That place known as the Promised Land. God gave them the 10 Commandments to obey,
There they are.
which they at once began disobeying.
Oh, of course they did.
They complained that they were hungry.
We're hungry.
So God gave them manna, which fell from the sky. Everywhere. They complained that they were thirsty.
We're thirsty.
So God gave them water from a rock. They got sick of manna.
We don't like manna.
So God provided them quail to eat.
Oh, I bet you that's gonna be good grilled up. I bet you it'll taste like chicken.
Oh, tastes like chicken, you're right.
And this is how it went for the years that it took to get to the Promised Land. The Israelites were disobedient and whiny, and God continued to forgive and provide until at last they arrived at the Promised Land.
All right, guys, gather around, gather around. We made it. This is the Promised Land, the land that God promised to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey.
I'm leaving.
Does it have to be milk? I'm lactose intolerant, Moses.
Stop! Enough! Oh, I'm so done. I've sent spies ahead to figure out what is going on, what's happening in the land.
I'm back! I'm back! I'm back!
What'd you find?
Oh, well, it's a land, and there's milk, and there's honey, but there's big people there too, and they're hairy, and they're dangerous.
Are they bigger
Come
than
on,
me?
help me out here.
Now what are we gonna do?
Well, that's just great. I wish I were back in Egypt.
I wish I was dead.
Stop whining! I have had it with you guys. God promises us a land, yet you
No, the
still
book says
complain.
this.
God promises he'll defeat our enemies, yet you still won't trust him. Well, that's it. I've had it with you.
And so God, who had led the Israelites to the Promised Land, punished them. They were forced to wander in the desert for the next 40 years. None of those who saw God wonders in Egypt
None of
ever got to see the Promised Land,
Oh, man.
including
right.
Moses.
Aw, man.
And to make a long story short,
Too late.
40 years passed. Scene 4, wandering in the desert.
Or could we get off at the next exit? Because I have sand in my shoe.
Moses died, and God chose a new leader for the Israelites named Joshua.
Hey there.
Joshua was humble
Hey there.
and led the Israelites. Well, at last it was time to re-enter the Promised Land. Joshua led the Israelites into the Promised Land, and this time they are ready to trust God and do this whole thing His way.
All right, listen up, Israelites. There are many people living in this land that are going to try to stop us from moving in.
Hey,
I don't like that.
did we make reservations? Because I'm not driving around trying to find a hotel.
Well, just stop interrupting and pay
Yeah,
attention.
come on.
All right, now, as long as we obey God, good things will go well for us. But if we disobey God, we will have trouble.
And that's the way it worked. When they obeyed God and did things His way, nobody could stop them.
Yeah!
But when they let sin into the picture or disobeyed God, even the wimpiest enemies beat them.
Oh, man.
And in this way, they eventually took over most of Canaan, the Promised Land.
Yeah!
When they obeyed, they won.
Yeah!
When they disobeyed, they lost.
Stop.
They won some,
Yeah!
And they lost some. You know, sometimes they even.
We get the picture.
We get it.
Okay, geesh. Oh no, where was I?
Oh, wait, excuse me. I think it was on this left-hand page, right in the middle.
Oh, right, here yes. And in this way, they eventually took over most of Canaan. Scene 5, entering the promised land.
Oh, milk and honey?
Yeah.
I thought he said elk and bunnies. Oh.
Weird. Before his death, Joshua gave the Israelites some instructions.
Okay.
I'm going to die soon.
Die? I didn't even know you were sick.
I'm not sick. I'm old.
My uncle
that's
Guido had
worse.
that one time. He
That's-
didn't
All
make it
right,
easy.
now, pay attention. Don't forget what God has done for you. And now that there's just one thing that remains that God wants us to do for him. Now that we own almost all of Canaan, we need to clear the remaining people out of there.
Do we really have to do that?
Yes, you
Seriously.
do.
But why?
Because God wants you to.
Oh, fine, we
okay,
will, we
all right,
will.
All right, yeah.
You'll work on that?
We
Promise?
will, we promise.
Yeah, we will. We
Yeah,
will.
like I've ever heard that before.
And so Joshua died. And to make a long story short,
Too late.
the Israelites ignored God's command to clear out all the other people living in Canaan. Scene 6, the judges.
Can we get off this ride? I'm sick of going in circles.
Yeah. The time of the judges was a tricky one for the Israelites. They refused to obey God and clear out all the other living people in Canaan. And because of this sin, more sin followed. Soon they were marrying people that they shouldn't have been marrying and following false gods. They pretty much abandoned God, and God allowed them to be captured and taken by their enemies.
God help us! We've been captured by our enemies.
Enemies. Isn't this kind of our fault, though?
You mean if we would have cleared out the land like God told us to, then we wouldn't be going through any of this?
Well, yeah, that's not how I said it, but yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. God help us! We've been captured by our enemies.
Enemies.
And so God sent them a leader, a judge to lead them to victory against the enemies who had captured them.
Yeah.
They didn't sound excited at first. And this is how it went. For 325 years, the Israelites would follow and obey God. He would bless them and give them victory over their enemies. Over time, they'd get kind of comfy and forget about God, and God would allow them to be beaten by their enemies.
Run away! Run away!
They'd cry out to God for help.
God help us! We've been captured by our enemies.
Enemies.
And God would send a new judge to free them.
Yay!
And on it went like this.
God help us! We've been captured by our enemies.
Enemies.
And God would send a new judge to free them. They'd cry out to God for help.
God help us! We've been captured by our enemies.
And God would send a new judge to free them. They'd cry out to God for help.
God help us! We've been captured by our
God
And,
help us.
and God would send a new judge to free them.
We've had enough.
Then what happened?
Help us! We all okay, I'm not doing
more.
this anymore.
Okay, well, needless to say, they were caught in a terrible cycle of sin. The cycle of sin and disobedience continued for years. You may wonder, where does it end?
Where does it end? Where does it end?
It ends with scene 7, the kings.
Or out of the fire and into the frying pan.
Either way, it's a mess. The last judge during this time was a guy named Samuel. But when he retired, the Israelites started whining again.
That's us.
Yeah, that's all of you.
Samuel's tired.
What happened? What I missed?
What do you guys want?
We want a king.
We want one now.
Yeah, we want a king right now. You know why? You know why? You know why?
Why?
The Philistines have a king. I tell you, they
The
do.
Amalekites have a king.
All
We
right.
want a king.
Why can't we have a king?
Listen, you don't want a king.
What?
Do you know what's going to happen if you have a king?
What?
They're going to take your sons and your daughters and make them work for him.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
No, that's not a good thing. They're going to take the crops of your field and everything that you work so hard for. He's going to use that for his own purposes.
Oh, I don't have to harvest that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Not a good thing. You're going to have to work for him.
Take a breath.
You don't
It's okay.
want a king. You're going to practically be slaves.
Oh.
Read our lips.
We want a king and we want one now. Yeah.
You all make me furious.
So God gave them a king.
Have fun.
He knew this would not solve everything, but he saw that they would have to learn the hard way. During this time, there were many kings, actually, but the first king was Saul. King Saul was a pretty good king for a while, but then he slipped into sin and disobedience, and so God replaced him with David.
Bye-bye.
David was a very good king, and during his rule, the Israelites finally seemed to be back on track following God and being obedient. Now, don't get me wrong, David had his share of mess-ups, like that whole Bathsheba incident.
Do we have to bring that up?
Well, overall, David did have a good rule.
Yeah.
He was known for being a man after God's own heart. David set up the city of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and God promised David that his son would be the one to build the temple, and that David's family would rule forever.
Yes.
So David died.
Oh, I just got here.
Well, Solomon became king.
I say, yeah. I say, yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. The king is here.
Really?
Go ahead, little lady.
Whatever.
Solomon was a great king and did build the temple. But in the end, he blew it all.
Whoa, lady.
Yeah.
You're giving me a little heartbreak hotel here.
Well, you disobeyed God and worshipped other false gods.
Now you're making me sound like a hound dog.
You were. You set off a chain reaction that led to Israel's ruin.
Oh,
And
I feel so lonely, baby.
after
I
Solomon,
feel so lonely. I could die.
wow, well, he did. So Solomon died, and a kind of civil war broke out between the north and south of Israel.
Woo! Northern Israel is the best. Southern Israel, second best. Go Northern Israel! Woo! I'm not doing the splits.
Oh, man, do you know what time it is?
What time is it?
It's time for the perfect cheer.
Oh, I should have known.
Who's the Israelite? That's the best.
It's me. It's me.
I said, who's the Israelite? That's the best.
It's me. It's me.
Northern Israelites, we don't want to hear it because we're the Israelites with the best spirit.
So go back home and shut your mouth. The coolest Jews come from the south. Go Israel!
Anyways, Israel was split, and as a result of Solomon's sin, just as God had warned, both kingdoms from the north and south were led by king after king after king, almost all bad kings. Further and further from God, the nation of Israelites grew until...
Oh, hold on there, little lady.
Hi, Solomon.
Hey, you were talking about all that nonsense, that stuff about a king to rule forever and ever and ever. What about that stuff?
Jesus. It's
Who's
Jesus.
that?
Jesus is the king from your family that'll rule forever and ever and ever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting to it.
You may continue.
Thank you. Uh-oh, where was I?
Further and further.
Thank you, yes. Further and further from God, the nation of Israelites grew until scene 8, the exile.
I do. I got this one.
Okay.
We'll be back. Is that good?
Yeah,
Okay.
good job. Okay, well, yeah. So during this time, the kings, God sent a prophet to warn the people. These were men that were sent by God to speak for him, warning the people away from sin.
People, step away from the sin. Step away from the sin. I am a trained professional. Go back to your obedient lifestyles, following the God of your ancestors. Please listen and obey. Thank you.
Yeah, no dice. Nothing worked. So God brought the ruin on Israel that he had told Solomon he would. Northern Israel was attacked by a country called Assyria. They were captured and hauled off to Syria as slaves and servants. Southern Israel, now called Judah.
Who's the coolest country?
It's Judah. It's Judah.
I said, who's the coolest of countries?
It's Judah. It's Judah.
Do you all mind here?
Judah rocks.
They didn't rock for very long because they were attacked by a country called Babylon, and they too were captured and hauled off to be slaves and servants. During this time, lots of interesting stuff happened.
In news today, a man named Isaiah, claiming to be a prophet of God, announced that there is coming a day when God would send a deliverer. The man said, and I quote, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. The man shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace," unquote. For more on that story, tune in at 5. Thank you.
Apparently, 3 young men, Shadrach, Meek, and a bubblegum, were thrown into a fiery furnace today. They survived, more at 11. In a spectacular story today, a man named Daniel is thrown into a den of hungry lions and survives. Doesn't bode well for the Vikings and Bears this year. That and other news coming up shortly.
Thank you, Steve. And today's top story, Queen Esther, Queen of Persia and wife of King Xerxes, saves all the Jews in Persia from total annihilation. Reports confirm that 50,000 Jews returned to the city of Jerusalem today. These Jews and their families were taken captive over 70 years ago by Babylon, but are the first to have returned to their homeland.
Thank you, Darla. A spokeswoman from Israelites confirmed that they do plan to rebuild the temple, but the rest of the city lays in ruins because of the Babylonian attack over 70 years ago. More coming on that.
And so it went. The Jews had been exiled from their homeland, but even as captives in foreign countries, God still used his people. Time passed, and to make a long story short,
Too late.
every time, guys, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
70 years after they were taken captive, the first of them began to make their way home. There was a man named Nehemiah who was still living in Persia at the time. When reports came back from Jerusalem that the city was in ruins, his heart was broken.
Oh, my heart is broken. King Xerxes,
Yes.
please listen to me. You must let me return to Jerusalem. I've got the plans here to rebuild the wall around it.
Are you nuts?
No, the wall was destroyed. See, the plans will rebuild it. The enemies, my people, will be free to attack if I do not do this. I must return and rebuild the wall for the glory of my God.
Well, if you put it that way, you may go.
Oh, that was easy. Thanks.
And Nehemiah leads us to scene 9, the return to Jerusalem.
Or deja vu. I feel like we've been here before.
Nehemiah returned to Jerusalem with the help of King Xerxes and pled with the Jews to begin rebuilding the wall after he removed the podium.
Excuse us, our union's just not working today, is it?
Well,
now?
obviously.
I gotta remember all these other things. I can't remember everything. All right, here we go. One more time. Come on, Jews. We're going to rebuild this wall. I got the plans. I do. They're right here. God is really going to be honored when we get this city wall built.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah, that's easy for me to say, isn't it? And then God's people will be free to return. So let's get building.
All right,
Hey,
let's
all
do
right,
this.
let's do it.
Let's do
And
this.
so the Jewish people worked and worked.
Hi-ho,
Hi-ho,
It's off to work we go.
Around the clock they worked. They faced much opposition. Enemies tried to stop them, and they carried their swords in one hand and their tools in the other.
Charlie,
Huh.
your hammer is in the other hand. You might want to switch them around.
Did you see my knife? Did you see my knife?
That's not a knife. This is a knife.
But despite the opposition they faced, they rebuilt the entire wall around the city of Jerusalem in 52 days. During the rebuilding of the walls, Nehemiah became governor, and he led the people in an amazing thing.
My friends. Hey, my friends are still here. Good. The time has come. We were building a wall.
Sawdust.
It's just sawdust. It's good, bud. Thanks for noticing. That means my friends were busy. That's great. And then it'll give me a chance to redo my line. Okay, we're going to start this over. My friends, the time has come to return to being God's people and living in God's way. God has brought us back to the land that God promised to Abraham. And now it's time to return God's people in his living way. Let's go.
All right.
And in a way that happened. The people recommitted themselves to God and to living in his ways for the first time in many years. They didn't get it perfect, but it was closer than they had been for a long time. Time passed, about 400 years to be exact, and not much is recorded about what took place during this time. We know that during this time, Rome was going from city to city and taking captives and taking over these lands. They came and took over the whole region of Judea, where the Jews were. They didn't enslave them, but they did put a king in charge to rule over them. His name was Herod, and not much else happened during that time. The Jews continued to live their lives, and as they did as the rest of the world, following God, but not knowing what it was like to be in that perfect relationship with God that he had designed for them in the beginning.
Until one silent night.
The cry of a newborn baby in a filthy stable.
But that's the rest of the story.
After all, a good author always leaves room for a sequel.